offering the mandala for all of us. That's really
Yes.
good. So we just think, so, okay, good. We imagine all the objects of the universe. If you know this Buddhist cosmological view of the world, fine. If not, don't worry. Just imagine all the marvelous things, pile them all up in your heart, and offer to the Buddha as a request for the teachings. That's the plan. Okay.
Okay. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Muru, the 4 continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all transitory beings enjoy this pure land. Perfect, pure, holy gurus from the billowing clouds of wisdom and compassion in the sky of the Dharmakaya. Please let fall the rain of profound and extensive Dharma upon the receptacle of those to be subdued exactly as they need. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnirayatami.
All right, everybody. So we think here the first two lines, I'll say the first time in English, say extra few words. And then the first 2 lines are reminding us of our reliance on the Buddha and his teachings. And the second 2 lines are stating our purpose. As we know, the Lamas call it motivation. We'd say, what's our purpose? Why are we here? What's our goal? Where are we going? Where are we heading? What are we doing? Well, we're heading to enlightenment. And so in order for this action to become a cause for that, we have this thought, may I listen to these teachings so that I can become a Buddha, so I can benefit others. Right there, that motivation makes it this action a cause for enlightenment. So thinking like that. So that was the first time in English. Now we say 2 more times in Tibetan. Sangye chodang soke chognam la janchu baru dagni kyapsu chi dagi chonyen gi personam ki drola penchu sangye dropa shog. Sangye chodang soke chognam la janchu baru dagni kyapsu chi dagi chonyen gi personam ki drola penchu sangye dropa shog. Okay. So that's what we're talking about here, actually. We're doing a 10-day retreat on Mahamudra, which is just a way of realizing emptiness, you know. But before that, I just want to tell you, some of you might know that I was supposed to come to Australia and straight to New Zealand a week ago, and I did, but then I got a call at 2 in. Impermanence is on my mind, because 2 in a week ago, Tuesday, a week ago, 10 days ago now, must be 10 days ago. This Tuesday, no, the 2nd of August, God, so quickly. My sisters in Australia called me and said that my darling older sister, Jan, had just fallen down the stairs and her brain had smashed to pieces because she fell on her head. And then she was basically dead. So they so kindly kept her alive on the machine until I got there. And Qantas very kindly fixed my new flights. And I got there and sat with my darling sister and all my other sisters and my brother, the 7 of us, in the hospital room. And of course, none of them are Buddhists. All my sisters aren't, my brother aren't Buddhist. They were Catholics, but they've all given it up, you know. So there they are singing this, because my sister's a fanatic Sydney Swans football supporter. So they're all singing the Sydney Swans song when we turned off the machine. And I was trying to be polite and snuck in some mantras into Jan's ear, you know. So after Jan stopped breathing, they all left because as far as they're concerned, she's dead. So I sat for a few hours with Jan saying mantras and things. And the nurse at the hospital was so kind because she's a Thai nurse, so she was a Buddhist, and she kind of was very kind. People were very, very kind there. It was very interesting. It's the first time I've ever sat with a dead person. It's very curious all my life. First time. I've seen a couple of dead people, but I haven't actually been through even a few minutes, you know. So it was I'm so happy. I'm so fortunate it was my sister, my older sister, Jan, you know. She was 11 months older than me. So that's it. She was going down the stairs to help her husband. He's completely senile now and got cancer. He'd fallen on the ground. So she's going down the stairs to help him. And she trips on the last few stairs and falls on her head. Her little head completely destroyed. Blood. And the 2 other sisters came in and found her soon after. And just a massive pool of blood. And her husband lying on the ground next to her, conscious, but totally oblivious. I mean, this is the tragedy, isn't it? So people, and the learning is, as Pabonka Rinpoche says, the one learning, this will happen to me. Might not fall on my head. We might not get senile. And then suddenly I'm hearing now another sister, her husband's dying of cancer. You can't avoid it, you know, we're always shocked. We're always shocked. So what this brings me to bring us into our course, the key point that Buddha's making, the fundamental point, and initially it's quite surprising, the fundamental point that Buddha's making is, we suffer because we're not in touch with reality. So our topic these weeks is, of course, the final level at which things exist, the subtlest level of reality, the way Buddha talks, so-called emptiness. But everything in the Lam Rim, everything we've studied up till now, all these modules we've done are leading us in logically, psychologically to this point, because every piece of the Lam Rim, starting with impermanence and death, is simply presenting Buddha's own direct experiential findings about how things exist. So he only tells us to think about impermanence. Why? If we already realized impermanence, if we were already in sync with the truth of impermanence, we clearly wouldn't have to think about it. So why he's explaining you need to think about impermanence is because we think things are permanent. I mean, that's one of the first levels of Buddha's teaching. So everywhere across the board, every piece of the Lam Rim, he tells us about impermanence. Why? Because we think it's permanent, and he says, no, sorry, guys, you better wake up. It's in fact impermanent. Then he talks about the lower realms, and he says the likely possibility of rebirths. You know, your consciousness continues to other realms. That's a big surprise. One of the first shocks that we get when we listen to Buddhism. He says that's reality. That's what he's observed. He's not made it up and shoved it down our throats. That's reality. We live in denial of reality. Then we get to refuge and body, you know, and taking refuge in the Buddha. That's fine. We know about the Buddha. And then we finally get to start to practice, which is abiding by the laws of karma. And that's the biggest shock, that our consciousness is a continuity of mental moments, that it's not the brain, that it didn't come from mummy, didn't come from daddy, didn't come from a creator. These are all conceptions we have, and we're fine. We're allowed to have any conceptions we like. But the Buddha is simply telling us what he has found to be true. Don't just believe him. Don't just swallow it whole. He is telling us this is what he thinks is true. Now, the crucial point is, before we even get any further, why do we want to be in touch with what's true? I mean, it sort of sounds, and when we think of religion, we think it's dogma, isn't it? You've got to believe this, shove it down your throat, whole, undigested, and believe it. That's what we think of. So then it scares the life out of us to think about religious philosophy, you know? But we understand this because the scientific view, that's exactly what it is. It has been discovered that 1 + 1 is 2. It has been discovered, things called botany. No one made this is the thing about natural law. No one made these things up. Clever people have observed the world and come up with this explanation of things. That's what Buddha has done. He's saying, don't believe a single word I'm telling you, but this is what I found to be true. Now, why should we be in touch with truth? That's what's interesting. I mean, I wonder why in science we talk about that. Why do we say we want to find out what's true? It's kind of interesting. Well, the Buddha's view is very fascinating. He says the extent to which we're not in touch with reality, and not just merely not knowing something, the kind of ignorance we've got at all these different levels of ignorance is not just not merely not knowing that things are impermanent, but this is the worst part, but thinking the opposite. That's the killer. Merely not knowing, that's kind of stupid, that's called stupidity. But believing the opposite, that's where the trouble is. So this is Buddha's explanation for why we suffer, and therefore his explanation of how to stop suffering is to get wisdom. I mean, this is quite a surprising concept. That's not what we think in the West. Not at all. You don't go and study science to get happy. You don't study cooking to get happy because you're going to learn something, so you get happy. I mean, there's some happiness can come because we're doing what we want. But the real point the Buddha is making, the extent to which we are not in touch with reality, not just that, but the extent to which we're in touch with the opposite of reality and believing it intensely from the depth of our being, honey child, he says, this is why you suffer. It's a very interesting take on life, I swear. We do not think like this, you know. And I find also what's fascinating, and I mention this often, we understand wisdom in the West. We know clever people, and we think of it as intelligent. It's true. Intelligence is a really good quality. So if you're intelligent at math and music, and we honor that kind of wisdom as appropriate. But what's fascinating, isn't it? Like I always say, you can be the best physicist on the planet, but you'll still be neurotic and hopeless and depressed and go back home and beat up your husband and children. So for us in our culture, getting wisdom has got zero to do with getting happy, and because it's got zero to do with ethics. So this is what's so fascinating in the Buddhist path. It's all ethics, happiness, wisdom are utterly integrated. Utterly integrated. The more wise you become, the more ethics you have. The more ethics you practice, the more wise you become. The more ethics, the more wisdom, the more happiness. This is the logic in Buddhism. It's very fascinating. That's why wisdom on its own, just having a clever head, a head full of knowledge, is is worse than useless. And that's what's fascinating. I mean, we were talking about this at the retreat. You know, lots of people, I mean, because in Mahamudra meditation, we'll mention it in this 3 days, I think, because it's about emptiness. Mahamudra meditation is a very particular technique for realizing emptiness of the mind. It's very specific. And the whole point behind it is because mind is so powerful. You see, when we realize, like when we talked in karma, that everything we ever experience, any sentient being, through the senses and with our mental consciousness, this is what's fascinating. Nothing goes astray. One thing about karma, that whatever you think and do and say leaves a seed and then will ripen as your experiences. But this other one is just bare bones. Everything we think and do and say and see and taste and touch and smell and think about is stored in our memory. So we have got stored in our memory beginningless lifetimes of experiences. They are stored in our memory. So we can see where some people have these what they call psychotic experiences. They suddenly see the universe and have blissful experiences and don't sleep for weeks and completely go crazy because they've obviously done some kind of meditation in the past where you do access your mind, but they haven't got enough ethics. There's not been enough ethics or not given up. They haven't given up attachment, but you have to have this experience, what we call as spiritual experiences. And most people can't cope with it. So they go mad because the stuff, there's so many experiences we've had in the past. We've had shamatha, we've had karma binding in countless lifetimes. We've had high realizations in many lifetimes. We've never realized emptiness, so we'd never lose that. We could even have had bodhicitta. And all of this is stored in our mind. It's very fascinating. So no wonder we have bizarre experiences. So this is the thing about merit. This is the whole point we have to understand. You can be clever. You can be wise. You can learn all about emptiness. You can be a genius. You could teach it at university and you'd be accurate. Every word could be accurate. But if you don't have ethics, which comes from the beginning part of practice, abiding by the laws of karma, stopping harming others, living in vows, purification, subduing your attachment, subduing your anger, subduing your jealousy. That's the nitty-gritty of Buddhist practice. Then when you've got this and you're smashing delusions, one result is you become more humble and more patient and more kind, but the other result is that you become more wise because delusions cause you to be ignorant. So you've got to combine wisdom with ethics. Then you'll be fine. Then you can handle what happens in your mind. You understand it because you're going, and that's why following the Lamb Rim is so brilliant. It's this brilliant map that takes you according to your capacity psychologically. We can't see that initially because it seems so arcane and medieval, you know, but it's totally psychologically incremental, progressive. And then and even the way emptiness, you see, even the way emptiness is presented at the end of the path. I mean, here we are now, we've done all the other modules practically, but one more to go in this past year. And so we're now at the sort of 11th or whatever number it is, 12th, whatever it is. And it's emptiness. Now, if we analyze that, and we're at the 6 perfections of the Bodhisattva. What happened to the other perfections? When are we supposed to think about the other perfections? What module is that? Tara?
I don't know.
Can you please look in the course notes? We haven't done
the perfections.
I mean, this is the 6th perfection. Emptiness is the 6th perfection. What happened to the rest? We have to talk about them. I can't believe it. What does it say? I've got to get the module out. Will you look up something I have, please? Find out.
I'm trying. I will.
The first 4 perfections have not even been discussed, and they're so important.
Yeah. It'll be a minute, please.
I beg your pardon? I beg your pardon?
It'll be a minute, please.
I'm not in a hurry. Don't relax. I'm looking for something myself. Don't worry about it. So this is emptiness. Yeah, that's right. And that was the last one, was transforming problems. Maybe we're supposed to teach the 6 perfections in the last one. That's very curious. I can't believe we've missed it. You're going to have to, you just research, please, Tara, while I keep talking, and see if you can find where the 6 perfections, the first 4 perfections come in. Because here we've got the last, presumably the last 2. Wisdom is the 6th perfection.
May I say something?
Yeah, please say something.
It's in the module on bodhicitta. It's
we missed it. We didn't do it.
Module 10.
like here, and I didn't do it, so I'm going to have to squeeze it into this module. I'm so sorry, and you didn't even call me on it, Tara. You should have
My
said.
apologies, and thank you, Christine.
Not at all.
My fault, Tara. Okay, we'll have to discuss the six perfections here. Of course, the six perfections would come with Buddhi, after bodhicitta. So, okay, but here we are. Anyway, in this, I'm getting at about wisdom. I'm getting at about wisdom at a certain point. The final wisdom of understanding the ultimate way that things exist, which all the rest of the stuff leads just to. Okay, never mind. Maybe we've got to talk about the first, maybe this class has to be the first four perfections in. So we have to wait for wisdom for next week. Well, the last 2 weeks can be about emptiness. So we've got to do the six perfections. I'm really sorry. This is very shocking. I forgot. So, okay. So anyway, leading to, let me just finish the point about wisdom, okay? Everything all the way through the path, it's integrated, it's organized beautifully to lead us according to our own capacity in order to each step of the way, each step of the way, each step of the way psychologically. So the fact is, what's interesting about wisdom, the wisdom that realizes emptiness, the sixth perfection, insight into emptiness. In fact, emptiness is a Theravadan teaching. Emptiness fits in this in the second scope, because in order to realize, achieve your own nirvana, you need to. In order to achieve your own nirvana, you need to realize emptiness. You have to. So clearly, if you're going to realize, if you're going to achieve your own, your own nirvana, your own cessation of suffering, emptiness fits there in that, at that level, in the second scope. It's a wisdom teaching in the second scope. It's not Mahayana at all. Emptiness is not a Mahayana teaching. But also, therefore, too, the fifth perfection, which is shamatha, calm abiding. I have to talk about these. This is terrible. We'll talk about calm abiding with emptiness. So that, in fact, is a Hindu teaching, but the Buddha very comfortably took it with him when he went off in his own direction. So that is also taught here, but both of these are taught at the end of the Mahayana path, because we get renunciation first in the first and second scopes by abiding by the laws of karma, living in vows, purifying, and then by looking into the mind, understanding samsara, nirvana, understanding suffering, understanding the delusions really deeply. All of that gets us renunciation, gets us want to give up suffering because we're sick of it. And then we go to the bodhisattva path and we get bodhicitta. And now we're ready to get concentration and to realize emptiness. Because the thing is, anyway, I won't go into that. No need for that. No need for that. So let's go back to module 10, whatever it was. Let's see there. So let's look at that. We'll go the first four, because these last two, in this topic, is the fifth and the sixth perfections. So basically, one, you abide by the laws of karma, you begin to get some renunciation of suffering, future suffering. And then you go to the next scope and you start to realize, get rid of attachment and the delusions, because you don't want any kind of suffering. You want to get out of samsara altogether. Then we get to bodhicitta and we go through the equanimity and those different stages and we accomplish bodhicitta. Then after that, we then go to the next stage of our practice, which is the perfections of the bodhisattva. And basically, once you've got bodhicitta, the bodhisattva then kind of is vowing to never give up benefiting sentient beings. When you've got bodhicitta, you've got this fierce enthusiasm, this fierce optimism, this fierce, immense compassion that the suffering of others is so unbearable, and you will never give up. So there's two parts of this bodhicitta. One is, I'm going to help whoever's in front of me. It's just your job, like you're their mother. But second, the long-term goal, no matter how many lifetimes it will take you, and you'll take lifetime after lifetime, because the bodhisattva path, you need to accumulate masses and masses of merit. So it takes time. So you're prepared to go from life after life after life, bopping around life after life after life, accumulating practicing these six perfections. Basically, that's what you're doing. So you practice first generosity. So what's generosity? I mean, it's, the first, there's these six perfections. You have to, so the first four, are perfecting, if you like, the compassion wing. You're perfecting virtue. And the last two, you're perfecting wisdom. And you go from life after life after life, practicing these on the basis of bodhicitta, That's what you're doing. So the first of these four, the first four are generosity, morality or ethics, patience, and perseverance. They're 4 qualities. I mean, we could give teachings on months on these. I'm going to talk about them in 1 hour, this class today. So each of these, you see, the taste of the wisdom wing is one thing, and this taste of the compassion wing, they're quite different. We've got to see that. Every teaching is either to help you lessen your delusions. Think of it this way. I mean, in a sense, they've all got both qualities, but you could argue the wisdom wing is constantly working on lessening delusion, so you get clearer and clearer, and that brings you your happiness. And the compassion component is you're still working on your mind, but you're kind of growing virtues. You're getting closer to sentient beings. The first lot is you're trying to avoid harming them. The second lot, you're trying to benefit them. The method is to continue to work on your mind. So the quality here of these perfections is all in relation to sentient beings. So generosity, we understand generosity. Well, there's 3 levels of it. So why generosity? It almost seems fairly arbitrary. Why choose that of any other virtues? Because what we're doing in the Bodhisattva path is continuously, step by step, breaking down the barriers that delusions have constructed between self and other. We're trying to eliminate the division between self and other. You could argue you're also doing that with the wisdom wing. You're getting rid of the delusion that believes in the intrinsic me. But on the compassion wing, you're doing the same thing, but in a different way, where both of them bring you to the point where you no longer have a sense of a separate self and you have infinite compassion for others, So it's really kind of tasty psychologically. So generosity, what's that? Well, we see we need to practice it because the instinct of I, the instinct of attachment, and then on the basis of attachment, this craving to cherish me most, to think of me most, is pretty profound. We can see that. So, as once we've got this so-called bodhicitta, then we continue to grow these amazing qualities. But in our ordinary life with no bodhicitta, we can see the benefit, because every time you think. So the first level of generosity, there's 3 kinds. The first is giving things. Giving material things. So I know when I started my bodhicitta trust years ago, and somebody who gave me some money to start it, she had a crystal and she wanted lamas to put in her house to help sell the house, to help me, my bodhicitta trust. And she wanted Rinpoche to write a mantra on it to help sell the house. And Rinpoche said, don't think of receiving, think of giving. This is the first of the 6 perfections. And in itself, it's an astonishing quality, because we all know we want things. One of the 8 worldly dharmas, we all crave to have things. When we see things, we want things. We have things. We want to possess things. And we like to be generous. But usually it comes only, you're generous only when you've got enough for yourself. It's very rare. Like if you buy a new coat, if I buy a new coat, I'll give you my old coat. I won't give you my new coat and keep my old one. I'll give you my old one, thinking I'm so generous, I mean, we are generous, but very limited, because usually we're only generous to our beloveds for a start. So this one of generosity is when you see sentient beings, what you're practicing to do as a bodhisattva, you see sentient beings and your wish is to do whatever they need. Your wish is like they're your child. So your immediate job is, what do they need? And so giving things is the first level. I mean, Lama Tsongkhapa, one of his Lamrim texts says, generosity is the wish fulfilling jewel with which you can fulfill the hopes of all sentient beings. It's like the first step. And naturally, to think of what others need, you're practicing thinking of what they need rather than just what you want. You're thinking of what they need. So giving things is a powerful practice. So in our culture, giving things, I think the main thing that we don't like to give is we don't like to give money. Money is a symbol, isn't it, of things. It's just something we've constructed over the centuries. Money, this thing called money. And I mean, we can see when one of our anxieties is never feeling we've got enough, or feeling we're going to run out of money. Or then we think, if I give it all away, I'll have no money, this kind of feeling. So we're very nervous about money. But I think an amazing practice in terms of giving, this very first, it's got to be a conscious thing. You've got to be conscious about it to want to give money, So, and I think, so how would you do that? I mean, how would you do that? How would you give money? In what context would you give money? Well, we give money all the time. We go to Starbucks and we buy a coffee and we buy a croissant and we give them $10, $15, 15 euros, whatever. We're giving money. We're very happy to do that when we get something for it. When we get something for it. But the homeless person outside makes us nervous to even give €1, €1, $1, because we don't get anything for it. It doesn't make us very comfortable. It makes us quite nervous, actually. So it's this attitude, don't think of receiving, think of giving. I mean, it's training the mind. That's exactly the Bodhisattva thought, training the mind to want to give. So, of course, it's easy when you're attached to people. When you're beloveds, we love to give presents. We love to give things. We are very generous when it comes to our beloveds. So, of course, here we're trying to think of giving to everybody. So then it's all according to their needs, So it's practice. These are all training. You really can call it training. You're training your mind. We often don't think we're not generous. We often don't think, oh, I'm a mean person. But if we really start to look, we really don't like giving. It makes us nervous, because if we give, that means I've got less. That's how we think about it. So one of the things that give us confidence about giving is when we realize even a grain of rice that we can have access to, that's the fruit of past giving. You only receive things. That's the karmic result of giving. Giving is the cause for receiving. So, if for nothing else, the main thing is to want to give now so we can keep the ball rolling for the future, for ourselves, to see the benefit. So giving is really quite a powerful one, because we do give only to our friends. We certainly don't want to give to enemies. And then we're prepared to give, because in the Western world, we have all this kind of non-profit mentality, so you can get tax breaks and things. And that's an incentive. It's good. Nothing wrong with that. But I remember, like Lama Zopa Rinpoche is famous for his levels of generosity. He's famous for his generosity, I remember one time in London, this is a long time ago, at the center there, he gave his robes to one monk, a new monk. And then he's walking out the door to go to the airport in his underskirt. And Roger just realizes he's given his robes away, his only set of robes. You hear stories about people who are very generous, who don't even think of anything for themselves, And Rinpoche's unbelievably, he's famous for all his endless projects where he's endlessly giving. And he doesn't go around fundraising. He doesn't go around asking people for money. Money comes because he's got so much generosity, so much merit, There's one wonderful story about Lama Zopa. He was years and years and years ago in Sarah J. There's a project there called the Sarah J Food Fund. It's going for about 30 years now, I think, maybe 30, where the abbot asked Lama Zopa if he would get enough money to put it in the bank in like millions, so that they could then live on the interest and build proper kitchens and feed the monks. Because the tradition in the Tibetan monasteries is very, very medieval. Used to be that the rich monks would come with their sacks of tsampa, and the poor monks would just have to eat grass, So it was but I remember Lama Yeshe, when he first started Kopan, he was really impressed by the Catholic thing of Christian one of giving and taking care of the community. So Lama Zopa, I think Lama Yeshe started Kopan Monastery in the same way, by giving everything to the monks. They get taken care of, they're given robes, they're given food, they're given medical care. It's very unusual, and now it's more and more like that in the monasteries. So Sarah J wanted to, because it's 3,000, 4,000 monks, wanted to build kitchens and feed them properly because they ate terribly. So Rinpoche was asked to raise all this money. So anyway, the story is a bit anecdotal, Roger couldn't see any evidence of Rinpoche looking for any millions of dollars. And then he had a meeting in Taiwan one year with his abbess. And the abbess told Roger the morning after the meeting that she'd had a dream the night before that a very special person was coming in the morning and to give him whatever he wanted. So, of course, what did Rinpoche want? $1,490,000.22, please. And that's exactly what he got. So that was the seed money for the Sarah J Food Fund, So that's one way of receiving. You have a direct line. Oh, yeah, sorry. She had a dream of Kuan Yin. Kuan Yin told her a very special person was coming and give him whatever he wanted. So giving, even if you're for your own sake, and don't discount this, giving is I mean, they say that one, we need morality, non-killing, in order to get a human body. But to have a life that we could have, as opposed to living in a poor country where you get, a bowl of rice after one day's work, where we are so fortunate we can just blink at money and it comes. We get jobs, we have houses, we have friends, we have money in the bank. Most of us, somehow, something. That's a miracle. That's the fruit of generosity. You can have a nice human body, but if you don't have resources, in order to practice, it's impossible. You can't. You have to work 20 hours a day just to get a bowl of rice. So to have a life with a good human body, plus access to Dharma, plus resources, the resources comes from generosity. It's a fundamentally necessary quality that we must practice, even just for our own benefit, in order for the future life to be born in a human family where we can get resources easily, so we can practice. This is the miracle. So generosity is an incredible practice, because you're meeting sentient beings all the time. And the whole point of the bodhisattva attitude is it's as if, once you've got bodhicitta, it's as if you're the mother of every child. Put it that way. It's as if they're all your children. So naturally, a mother knows it's her job when she sees the child. She's not wondering who's going to feed her baby. She knows it's her job. That's how we have to contemplate. It's our job. There's a sentient being in front of you. What do they need? You don't run around looking like a goody-goody girl showing off. But that's what's in your mind. You cultivate that. When we are normally like ordinary human beings, we've got attachment. So when we see sentient beings, our first instinct is to see what we need, to see if we can get what we need. And the person's mean to us, they're not giving us what we need, so we'll walk away. So we've got to shift that and have this thought, what do they need? And we have to practice it, of course. It doesn't come naturally. It's quite powerful. And I mean, of course, in the world, there's lots of ways we can give material things. And you've got to be wise. We can't give millions away. We don't have millions. So we have to be selective in what we give. So, of course, the other way to think, this is very intelligent, is you need to think strategically for your giving. Be strategic. And that means give to things that really benefit others. It makes sense for you karmically, and your money goes a long way. So we can give to non-profits, we can help the animals, we can help humans. But if you only got a little bit to give, you could argue the most sensible thing to give to would be your Dharma center, because that's a very powerful object that benefits many sentient beings. So then your money is used very wisely to benefit not only people's body, but also their mind. I mean, I remember Lama Zopa saying one time, he says, you can practice, you could give, because the first level of generosity is to give material things, right? The second level of generosity is to give spiritual teachings. This is a more subtle one. That's meant to be more difficult, but I think we'd rather do that one because it's easier. We love giving advice, spiritual advice. Even if people don't want it, well, we're happy to give it. But giving $1, not so good, not so comfortable. So the first one is giving material things. The second one is giving spiritual advice. That's amazing. And I remember Lama Zopa said, you could give food to everybody on the planet, the first one, which is an inconceivable virtue, but it only benefits their body. But you give one piece of spiritual advice to one person, that can benefit countless sentient beings, because that helps that person get enlightened. And that's karmically for you more powerful. So then you can kill two birds with one stone. You could give money to a Dharma center, which then gives spiritual advice. So you be strategic when you give. There's nothing wrong with that. Be sensible. You've got to really take care of your own karma. It's really, really important. And then you want to try and benefit sentient beings. So yes, what's the question?
Yes, Venerable. My question is, what qualifies you to give advice? How do you know whether you're qualified? I mean, I guess you don't have to be a bodhisattva or to have realized emptiness to give advice. So how do you know whether you're qualified to give advice, spiritual advice?
The answer is really obvious, sweetheart. If you're studying nutrition, you ask me that question, you know the answer. You're qualified to give the advice that you've learned. That's the answer. But our trouble is we don't think you can learn wisdom. We just blurt out whatever we think. We don't really even think you need wisdom. We just love to give people advice because it's attachment half the time. So clearly you can only advise people according to what you know. That's the wisdom wing. That's the answer. It's clear, isn't it? Does that satisfy you?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, exactly, perfect. So here we're talking the first kind of giving, the first one. So that one, I mean, the one that really makes us nervous in the world, I think, is giving money to beggars, giving money to poor people. That gets us we get very complicated with that one. So the commonest thing people say is, well, what if they use it for heroin? What if they use it to, to buy alcohol? I mean, in a way, you see, when we're talking this particular, each of these practices is a very specific practice. It's its own practice. So giving is a very particular practice. So the impulse would be, if you see a person who needs money, the wish would be to give. You want to train yourself to want to give. You don't check up, well, I wonder, maybe I'll give them a banana instead. They don't want your banana. They might appreciate a banana, but they really want money. But we get nervous about that. Well, it's sort of not your job to be their mother. If you can see they're about to kill somebody and buy a gun, then okay, don't give them money. But the practice here is for you to practice as you see a person who needs something, to want to reach out and give. That's the thing. And I think we don't like giving money to homeless people. Or if we do, it's a very small amount. It's a coin. I mean, coins you could have given 50 years ago, You really got to think about this. And then, I know even 20 years ago, when I was living in San Francisco, maybe 20 years ago now, 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. And I'd go out for a walk in San Francisco. We had the center there, and I was living there when I was running the prison project. And of course, the place is crawling with homeless people, junkies, alcoholics, crazies, And you're going to never have enough money to hand out. But I'd always just decided I would take some notes with me, 5s, 10s, 20s. I live on generosity. I rely on donations. So somehow it seems reasonable, if I'm feeling that people take care of me, I've got to pass it on, got to be generous. But you've got to train yourself to want to do that. So of course you can only do so much. So when you run out of your notes, you run out of your notes. You can't do more. And I remember there was a guy when he's totally alcoholic on a freezing cold night with hardly any clothes on in his wheelchair. How can I sit there and be so arrogant and say, oh, you're an alcoholic, I'm not going to give you money? Who do I think I am, who do I think I am? For me, the practice is to want to give. I've got to want to give. That's the practice. It's got to come from the mind. It's got to come from the heart. You're training yourself to break down the barriers between self and other. That's the training. Of course, you be intelligent within that. The training is to want to give. When you see your baby, if it's your baby or your beloved, that's the first thing you do. You see what they need, you take care. We're trying to train ourselves in that way for everybody, of course. So it's a training to think of it first. Maybe if you can't give, that's the next step, but you have to want to give, to train the mind, to see sentient beings. Because all of these perfections are these chipping away. It's chipping away at this artificial barriers that delusions have created between self and other. We're trying to chip away and eliminate those barriers, So it's a training for the mind. I want to give. You see needs, you wish I could give. I remember one story, you always hear one story about one Lama in a teaching. He must have been clairvoyant, because in the front row was what they call the benefactor, the jindak, I think in the Tibetan word for the benefactor of the puja. Usually, the person who benefacts the puja, they sit in the front row, they're treated very respectfully because they offered this to the Lama and offered that to the Lama, blah, blah, blah. So the Lama giving the teaching could see at the back row there was some beggar, and he must have been clairvoyant, because he praised the beggar and sort of put down the jindak, because the jindak in the front row was being very arrogant because they were so smarty pants. But the beggar was thinking, oh, if only I could be generous like that. And the Lama praised the beggar for creating more merit with his generosity. He had this open heart of praising this person who was giving, and oh, if only I could give like that. So it's an attitude in the mind, it's obvious everything starts in the mind. Your hand won't go in your pocket if your mind doesn't want to. And also we can be very nice people and live a very humble life and not use much money and be very simple, but we might not be very generous, because we tend to think, well, I'm poor, I don't have any money. We're missing the point. We're trying to train ourselves in wanting to give. It's a powerful practice. You can be very humble and very quiet and not spend much money and spend your pension every month and count all the pennies. But you've got to learn to be generous. It doesn't mean you have to give it all away. Don't be foolish. But that starts with the thought, I wish I could give. I want to give. Think big, Think huge thoughts. I wish I could do this. I wish I could do that. Make strong aspirations. Don't think small. Think big. And then you give what you can. It's an attitude that's really quite huge. And we know there are people that we know like that who just got a very generous spirit. Because if you're generous with money, you're generous with everything. If you're tight with money, you're very tight with everything. It's a symbol. It's just an indicator, isn't it? Money's just an indicator. So it's really quite a powerful practice, actually. It's more than we think it is, just giving some money to a non-profit, giving something to a beggar, giving something. It's an attitude. You've really got to look at it because it's very tricky inside. It's very complicated. We don't like giving. We feel fearful if we give. We feel if we give, we'll have less. We're very concrete about it. I mean, there's this wonderful saying the yogis say, if you're really practicing, if you really practice, the food will roll up the hill to you. You can't play with that. I mean, someone like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who is a holy being, who would seem to be a holy being, forget that. They say, in general, one of the qualities, once you've accomplished generosity, once you've accomplished bodhicitta, one of the signs is that there's no longer ever a thought of getting anything. It just doesn't arise in your mind. So we think, well, that's kind of idiot. Well, he's going to starve to death, Though these yogis in their mountains, this is the point. If you're fiercely only thinking of your practice and you're creating so much virtue, what you need will come. So with Rinpoche, he's famous for giving, but he's also famous for what people give him. People give him houses, statues, money. I mean, it's endless. So it goes in one hand and it goes out the other. So it keeps circulating, It's hard for us to imagine never thinking of getting something. It seems like insane, but it's pretty powerful. And if you think about it, we can train ourselves to want to give, which is a powerful antidote, of course, to attachment and fear, It's huge, really. It's a huge practice. I mean, again, I remember this with the prison project. When this person gave me this money, it was to help start the prison project. And this is the thing with the prison project. To help people in prison, they don't have money. They don't have money. They don't have resources, So what I found was you had to spend 10 times more energy getting one book to send to one prisoner than you would to anybody else, because normally with other people, if you want to have, like if you have a Dharma center, for example. I mean, the prison project was basically a Dharma center, but all our customers were in prison. So a normal Dharma center, you have a website, you put a thing on it, there's a button, donate, you come to a class, you put your money in the jar, you have a system. But with prisoners, there's no such thing. You only can give them. There's nothing, you can't expect anything in return. They don't have anything. So we had to practice, as this nonprofit, we had to consciously practice every day to want to give. You couldn't expect anything in return. So it was very powerful. And we succeeded. We got every penny we ever needed. And I decided when I ran it, I can't stand the nonprofit method, the nonprofit mentality, this begging mentality. And you know yourself, you give one donation to one nonprofit and then you're bombarded forevermore with 27 emails and letters and begging for money. I know the 15 years I ran the prison project, I never sent one begging letter. I did not have any donation button on the website. I didn't want to do that. I figured if we did a good enough job, people would appreciate it and they would give. And we got every penny we needed, So giving, begging, and I mean, I see it with all the Dharma centers. We're very afraid that we won't have any money. We're a non-profit. We write all these begging things. Oh, we're a non-profit. You've got to create merit and give us your money. It's disgusting, in my opinion. I'm sorry, I don't have to be rude. Because we're afraid of not having. We're afraid if we don't ask for it, it won't come. There's many ways to get money. And one is to do a beautiful job. One is to be generous. Yourself. The Dharma said is be generous. And people are so happy. So they're happy to give you. It works. We can see this. So we've got to have this attitude of not being afraid of not getting money. It's a very powerful attitude, generosity. It really is a shift in the mind. It's an attitude of wanting to give, not wanting to receive. It's huge. That's the first kind of generosity. The second one, more marvelous, giving spiritual advice according to your capacity. Pretty obvious. But we love to do that one, even if we don't have a capacity. We're so arrogant sometimes. We tell everybody what to do, and it's not good advice at all. It's just coming from our attachment. The third one's called, what time is it? The third one is called, the third type of generosity is called giving protection. It sounds odd, doesn't it? Saving people from prison and saving lives. Like you see an ant trapped and you release it, that's giving protection. It sounds a curious one. That's how they call it. So the next one's called morality. Well, the whole path is a path of morality. The entire path is a path of ethics. Different levels. The first level of ethics is refraining from harming. And mainly in the first stage to protect you from future suffering. Then even when you get to the bodhisattva path, it's still the same. It's refraining from harming, but now it's more also related to what's best for others. It's only when you get to the 6 perfections that we now add the morality of benefiting others, because now we're qualified. We've got some wisdom, So here, so it's just a general one. We're not going to spend time on this one. It's practicing helping others, not just practicing refraining from harming, which is fundamentally necessary as a starting point. That's why we control your body and speech and mind. Stop harming sentient beings. Now we are qualified, hopefully, with bodhicitta to know how to benefit with wisdom. So who do you benefit? You benefit whoever. It's like with generosity. It's really a similar practice, but generosity is quite a specific one, pinpointing the wanting to give. And that's the first level. The next one is now wanting to help others. It's the same kind of idea. It's the same kind of idea. Seeing the needs of others and wanting how to help, knowing how to help them, wanting to help them, wanting to help them. So this is what you can see, we've all got this. But of course, we've all got generosity too. But of course, they're all limited completely by our self-cherishing. They're limited by our own suffering and attachment, We're prepared to be kind, generous to somebody, but if they keep asking you for more money, you get fed up. If you're prepared to help a person, but they keep never getting better, you get exhausted. So really, these are very powerful practices when you think you're trying to do them without giving up, you only go one step at a time. So learning to help whoever needs help. Help the rich, help the poor, help the crazy, help the sick, help whoever you can. Having an attitude of what can I do? I think we can see also, this is the thing that's, we can really see the benefit to oneself of this. You can see people who are very sad, depressed, lonely, always thinking no one loves me, no one's helping me, why doesn't somebody ring me? You always, you always feel like you're on your own, isolated and lonely, and it never arises in your mind to help others. So we can see people are who do help others. They're very happy people sometimes. They're very happy people because it really is a powerful method for you to be happy, because as soon as you reach out, it opens you up, So it's a powerful antidote to loneliness and sadness and all those things, but it doesn't occur to us, So helping others, morality, practicing, there's much more to it than that. I'm just going to mention it. But the next two are fascinating. The next one's called patience. So throughout the entire path, we're practicing patience. But here is particularly the patience. There's different levels of patience. Here, these are stupendously powerful practices of the bodhisattva going from life to life to life to life, accumulating masses of merit. We're talking about incredible levels. The first one is patience. This is really shocking. They call it patience in the face of abuse. It's very shocking, that, to us. But let's just talk about patience in general, because we've got, I think, a bit of a misconception about it. We often think of it as like passive aggression. But patience is a really very brave attitude. It's very courageous. It's not just passively putting up with something, not like that. It's a very proactive attitude. So the only way we'll understand patience is by understanding anger. And the only way we really understand anger is by understanding attachment, because anger is the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. So when we really understand aversion is the bare bones state of mind that informs anger. Anger is just a volatile expression of aversion, isn't it? So aversion sort of attachment is this kind of, when you see something that's attractive to you, oh, that's delicious, and you want to go towards it and get it. That's attachment, roughly a way of talking. Aversion is the minute you see something or hear something or smell something or taste something that doesn't satisfy your attachment. So immediately you go away from it. You don't want to look at it. You don't want to see it. You don't want it. So patience is not doing that, but is greeting the problem, going towards the problem, opening your mind to the problem, greeting the problem. That really takes practice. That's because it's so instinctive. The second, you even just prick your finger, the second you just stub your toe, the second a slightly cold wind, the second a person looks mean at you, the instantaneous response, if we haven't practiced, is aversion. You push it away. We know that. So this proactive action of patience, especially in the face of terrible things happening. So when someone is mean to you. So you've got to practice this, because the instinct, it is literally instinctive that you will respond and you push it away, get upset, get angry, get frustrated, get upset, So patience is huge practice, to really practice it internally. To have, and this is what, earlier in the Bodhisattva teachings, as we discussed, this is really just another aspect of transforming problems. You greet the problem. You learn, and why? So why do you want to do this? It's sort of got to look at the logic of it, because we're trying to smash delusions. It's very simple. On the Bodhisattva path, you're fiercely wanting to smash your delusions, to smash self-cherishing, to smash attachment, to smash the delusions. And as a Bodhisattva, you're glad to welcome the problems. It's like, if you're a fanatic sports person, you love problems. I always think of Lance Armstrong. I read about Lance Armstrong. I know he's a naughty boy now, but I remember reading about his kind of this fanatic kind of never giving up, the patience of dealing with problems. He would, and it's the same as the next one. It's called perseverance. They can sound the same, but one comes after the next, So patience it's like reinterpreting that ugly thing. You greet it. Why? Because it puts atomic bombs under anger. It puts atomic bombs under anger. It's huge. And then the next one is patience when bad things happen, like getting sick and problems and obstacles, And the third one is patience patience with your practice. And all of this demands, ever deeper understandings of attachment and aversion, the fundamental delusions, which we get right back in high school, So they're really huge levels of these practices. Very brave, courageous. Because the instinct to not stand a problem is so primordial. We don't want to look at it. We don't want to hear it. We don't want to know about it. It's too painful for our minds. So here we're talking about patience, especially when it comes to somebody mean to you. Even just looking at the world and seeing suffering, we can't stand to look at it because we have aversion, not because we're compassionate. Aversion is so strong. We can't stand problems. We go crazy with problems. We just can't stand the pain. So when someone's mean to you, that's the most painful. It's like stabbed in the heart, isn't it? Just even a slightly unkind word. It's unbearable. So to greet it and to be glad is an incredible practice. Unbelievable. And then patience with the sickness, patience with the obstacles, patience with your practice. Because you won't survive. You won't get far if we can't have patience. So the last one, they say this, and they're taught in order of difficulty. So this last one is very fascinating. This last one's called enthusiasm or joyful effort. But the way to understand it is very clear when you look at the opposite. And the opposite is called laziness, which is so surprising. And there's 3 levels of laziness. Sometimes they say it's 2. I like to divide it into 3. And you will recognize these, and you will see how profound this obstacle is. Because they say without enthusiasm, you will not succeed at anything. And even in ordinary life, we can see this. So there's enthusiasm for ordinary life things. It's just not even enthusiasm. That's just called samsara. So here, of course, we're talking about enthusiasm in relation to your practice. But let's just look at it in general as an experience, and we will recognize it deeply. And again, it comes down to attachment. The obstacle is attachment. So the first kind of laziness is, I can't be bothered. You think about this. I think here, this is pointing out to the most primordial attachment we have, which is we're attached to our comfort zone. We crave to be comfortable. You think about this. So analyze, what is the thing that you would say about, oh, I can't be bothered? Think about it. It's a thing that takes effort. And what takes effort, listen to this, is the thing that attachment does not want. You make effort with attachment, no question. But if there's no attachment there, attachment to your comfort, and then if you have to go against your attachment, if you have to make effort, and I'm talking ordinary life now, going to the gym as an example, but although it's not really enthusiasm, it's just samsara. We're talking about our practice here. So well, even talk about your practice. You go to do a course, you get all enthusiastic. I'm going to do my meditation every morning. The first morning you get up, second morning you get up, by the third morning you wake up, and then you notice you're tired. And this is a very simple example. Tired means, and then you crave to sink back into that sleep, don't you? You crave to be comfortable. The thought of going against that comfort zone and climbing out of bed and doing your practice is too painful. We know this is so primordial. It's it's like animal level. It's so instinctive because attachment wants to be comfortable. Attachment only wants nice feelings. So the thing that's interesting is the Lamas say it, and you think about this, it's so logical. You will not ever make effort to do anything if you don't know the benefits of it. So you know the benefit of going to the gym, and even that's hard enough. After 3 days, I'll go tomorrow, because we don't like making effort because attachment doesn't want to be disturbed. This is very primordial. So if you don't know the benefit, then you will never make effort. That's why you've got to give yourself enthusiasm by remembering what the benefit is. So, of course, the benefit of the gym is fairly evident, and that's hard enough. The benefit of going on a diet, the benefit of being healthy, the benefit of having money, the benefit of getting what you want, even they're hard enough to want to be enthusiastic about. But here, the benefit of practicing, the benefit of working on your mind, this is a very hard one to see. I mean, we're so addicted to our old habits. So enthusiasm is a huge practice. So the first kind of laziness is I can't be bothered. The second one, which is a bit like sort of the way they teach it is like the first as well, but I'd like to have them separate, is a tricky one. It's a wicked one. You lie to yourself. So you wake up in the morning and I can't be bothered. You straight away, you're talking to yourself, and within 3 seconds, you say to yourself, oh, I'll do it later. This is the wickedest laziness possible because you lie to yourself and you sort of get yourself off the hook because it sounds virtuous, but later never comes. Even talking ordinary jobs in daily lives of ordinary people, one of the worst sufferings for most people is putting off doing the things you're supposed to do, isn't it? So you carry them around like a big burden. It is unbearable. We feel so bad about it because we're bone lazy. And then we feel the burden of putting it off is even worse than doing it, actually. And when you finally do that job you've had on your to-do list for the last 5 years, when you do it, it takes you a half an hour, you can't believe the relief. We all know this. The Lamas say one of the worst ways to die is with the regret of all the things you didn't do. Now it's too late. I remember a friend of mine, an old nun, same age as me. She died more than 5 years ago. Same age as me. born in the year of the monkey. And apparently she said, when the people with her, when she died, the pain of not practicing hard enough, you know. We can always say that by beating ourselves up, but we know when we, you know, put things off, can't be bothered, I'll do it another day. Everyone's like this. Everyone's like this because we're all attached to comfort. We would rather follow to do attachment. We'd rather do attachment. So it's a huge one for our own. This is all for our own benefit, you know. We're not talking about harming other people here. So you've got to catch yourself like a hawk. Don't lie to yourself. And then you see, and then because the idea of the effort is so tiring for us, but we all know it's incremental. You do a little bit. And then if we can, and this is what I find, if we can remember the pleasure we get when we don't put it off. When we remember the pleasure we get when we do make an effort. It's far better pleasure. Like it's far better pleasure than merely putting it off. We know this, you know. So you've got to be so clear with yourself, so rigorous. You've got to catch yourself, be so disciplined, and then pace yourself. This is the deepest one I can see. I mean, I can see, you know, I have jobs. I mean, most of my jobs are Dharma, so they're all Dharma anyway, so I'm fortunate. But there are some jobs I just put off doing. I can see it. They're on my list, on my computer. Everything's in my computer. All my work's in my computer. And my jobs, my letters, my emails, my editing is all in my computer. All my work, even my Zooms are on my computer, isn't it? So I see my things and I can see some jobs have been there, you know, and within a millionth of a second, I see it and I gloss over it and I rush to the next one and I do one other job that I'm enthusiastic to do. We've got to catch ourselves. We're so tricky, you know. And we are the beneficiaries of this. And we admire people who succeed because this is the key to success in anything. You won't succeed if you don't make effort. We all know, you know, we know it's true. We know it's true. So we're the beneficiaries of this. So at the same time, I'm not always saying you should always criticize yourself. I always should be doing more. You'll break your back that way. You get exhausted. Praise yourself when you do something. Delight in your progress. Delight in your effort. But you've got to really, this is so tricky, this one, I tell you. And the third kind of laziness, it sounds odd to call it laziness, but it's the deepest problem we have, is this, oh, I can't achieve that. That's not possible. We do this a lot, suddenly went off. I think I always think of one example. This is ordinary life, ordinary example. Like two kids watching, say, Roger Federer play tennis. This is the point. And one goes, oh, that's incredible. I couldn't ever do that. And the other kid goes, wow, I'd love to be like that. That's what we have to be. We have to have this enthusiasm. So this one then we need to cultivate is, I can do it. I want to do it. The impulse to say I can't do it, it seems like it's humble, but it's not. It's just the worst laziness because you kind of get yourself off the hook. The fact is we can be like Lama Zopa. We can be like the Dalai Lama. We can be like, you know, we can become a Buddha. So when you have confidence, you know you can, then you do it one step at a time. It's not as if, but what we do is we see it as self-existent and we see perfect Lama Zopa over there and fat, ugly me here. And we can't see the method in between. But if you understand dependent arising and cause and effect, and that you've got a map, you have the system all laid out. The methods are all there. So you start where you are and you go one step at a time, knowing that you can do it. But this brings me to something else in our daily lives, an attitude we need to cultivate. Very often we have this feeling, oh, we can't do anything, we can't achieve it, it's not possible, everything looks insurmountable. So let's just say Tara rings me up and says, you know, Rabina, His Holiness is giving an amazing teaching in Dharamsala next week that he'll only give once ever, and it's in Dharamsala. Would you like to come with me? Now, the first thing we do is we think of all the obstacles. We think of hubby, what's there, the kids, the job, you can't take time off, you haven't got enough money. The first instinct is not possible. And why? Because immediately we see all the barriers, we see all the obstacles. But this is the biggest mistake we make. We'll never do anything if we think that way, and that's what keeps us stuck. You have a plan to start a new business. You have a plan to do something new. You've got to have this optimism that says, I can do it. I want to. First, you even say, I want to do it. So instead of immediately saying to Tara, not possible, sorry, honey, oh, I'd love to, but I can't possibly do that. It's not true. So the first thing to do, this is real training for the mind, I tell you. The first thing to think is, I want to do it. If you don't think I want, that's everything exists on the tip of the wish. Intention, that's the meaning of intention. The bare bones mental factor called intention, which is I want, I will, volition. So you've got to say, I would love to do that, Tara. Then what you do is you then see if it's possible. What we do is that we cut ourselves off at the knees. We just see the obstacles. This is the kind of laziness. And we just say, no, oh, I can't do that. It's not possible now. We'll never achieve anything. So this one has to start with, I want it. I want to do that retreat. I want to become a Buddha. I want to achieve that. You've got to say that first. And then you'll find the method. Instead of this first instinct of seeing the obstacles and saying, I can't do it. This is powerful. In our ordinary life, in everyday life, it's like this. We see the obstacles and we panic. We can't do it, we say. That's this third one. It's the worst one. So it really needs rigorous thinking to change that. I want to do that. Then you find the methods. So if I say to Tara, what a good idea, I would love to do that. Then you open the door to the possibility. Then I can check up hubby, kids, money. And if I really want it and it's really beneficial, I promise you, you will find the way to do it. It's very powerful, this. Really, really powerful. I want it is the first thing. We do that with attachment and nothing will stop us getting it. Nothing will stop us, you know. It's training yourself to grab your mind. Yes, what a good idea. I can do it. This takes training because the instinct is I can't. The instinct is all you see is the impossibility. All you see is, you know, Lama Zopa out there, perfect, and me hopeless here, and you can't see the way to it. But we all know that Rome wasn't built in a day. All these things that our mothers tell us. It's understanding dependent arising, understanding cause and effect. But the first one is to want it. You got to want it. I want, I will. Then you'll find the method. And you go one step at a time. So this laziness one is huge. It's our main obstacle in life. And it's attachment to comfort. So the first one is can't be bothered. What's the thing you can't be bothered doing? The thing that takes effort. What takes effort is what attachment doesn't want. Next one, I'm too busy. I'll do it later. And you never will. And the third one, I can't do it. These are psychologically quite profound, if you really think about them. We've got to work on our mind every second, you know, to retrain ourselves. It's huge, this one. So, honeys, this is the four perfections. I'm sorry, so short, in 45 minutes, the first four perfections. So now let's discuss them. Any questions? Nothing. Okay. All right, then. Well, then we've got time to talk about shamatha, haven't we? If that's the case, this is whizzing through things. This is terrible. So the fifth perfection is shamatha, and the sixth one is wisdom, insight. Shamatha, or calm abiding, or shamatha in Sanskrit, or shine in Tibetan. So calm abiding, this name, calm abiding, is the name given to it's the name of the meditation technique, but it's also the name of the result. So calm abiding is a level of samadhi in Sanskrit. Samadhi means concentration. And it's these Indians that discovered this. It's a level of single-pointed concentration at a level of mind, like I always say, that we don't even posit as existing in the modern world. So as Lama Yeshe says in his Mahamudra book, in order to realize emptiness in meditation, whether it's Mahamudra or the classic sutra technique, which we're going to be discussing the next two classes, it is impossible without shamatha. And the reason is simple. It's like saying the only way you can see an atom is with a microscope. You know you can't do it with your naked eye. Well, that's the analogy. Gross conceptuality, which is the level of mind we function at, the level of conceptuality, the ordinary daily level of conceptuality, it is impossible to have a direct, what they call a direct realization, an actual experience of emptiness, until you get to the subtle level of mind, which is why we need karma binding. So karma binding, like I said, is a Hindu technique. These genius Indians invented it more than 3,000 years ago. And it's just simply the method to get us to access, I like to put it this way, the access the microscope of our mind, the subtle level of our mind, where we can now realize emptiness. The whole purpose of karma binding is to realize emptiness. So what's interesting is karma binding itself, you would almost be forgiven for thinking you're enlightened, having accomplished karma binding. You can't imagine the qualities. Inconceivable brilliance. The mind is inconceivable. You can't imagine the power of mind, which you taste when you get shamatha. There's a question. Yes, Terry. Yes, sweetheart.
Hello. Question. Once you experience during the practice a sense of emptiness, should you let it only be as it is, or should you try to fill it with something or bring something out of it?
Well, it's not really what it's not. Okay. It's not really what. It's not really. I don't know what you mean by experience of emptiness. Okay, put it like this. Put it like this, Terry. Some people, even from past life experience, have some imprint and will meditate and get some flash, some experience. But the thing is, it's there because you've done practice before. But if you haven't studied it and learned it now, you don't know how to interpret it. You don't know what it is. You don't understand it, and you don't know what to do with it. So it's not very helpful unless you understand what is going on, unless you understand it. So if you do know what emptiness means, and you have got good concentration, and you do have a moment of insight into emptiness, that's marvelous. Nothing wrong, nothing to do with it. That's fantastic. But you have to know what it is and know what to do with it. Often with people who don't have any spiritual experience will suddenly have an experience, but they're confused by it and don't know how to interpret it. That's not helpful at all.
So in the mind, I cannot go back to the past times and recognize something that I experienced previously, but it needs to be an actual experience in the here and now.
Like, if it is an experience, what I'm saying is, if it's an experience of here and now, what I'm saying is the only way to know what to do with it is if you understand the teachings and know how to interpret it. Many people go crazy from certain experiences in their mind because they don't know how to interpret what is happening. Mm-hmm. So you need to know the teachings and to need to have studied the teachings. So if an experience does arise, you know what to do with it. You understand it. That's the point I'm making.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. What's next? Another question.
Yes, Venerable. You mentioned how it's not possible to have an experience of emptiness with the gross mind, and that you can only do it if you're in shamatha. But then, just being devil's advocate, what's the point of only experiencing emptiness when you're in shamatha if you live your life most of the time outside of shamatha? You live your life most of the time with your gross mind.
That's not relevant. That's not the point. That's not the point at all. That's not the point, sweetheart. We've got conceptual mind now. We live in conceptual life. We live in conceptuality. So what we're doing here is we're studying emptiness conceptually. You must do that, and that leads you to the experience. We've got a conceptual level of mind, so you have to use it. That's what study means. That's right. What study means. So we have to study at the conceptual level, and that leads you to the experience in meditation. So you've got to start somewhere.
When you're outside of meditation, if you can only have the experience
in meditation.
You're
not understanding. No, it's not like that. It's not like that.
Okay.
You have to have a conceptual understanding of emptiness, and you apply that. If you're living in your daily life, you use your conceptual level. If you're in meditation, you use your non-conceptual level. So you don't leave it in meditation and come back to being an idiot. That's schizophrenic. You can only have a direct, you can only realize emptiness and actually cut the root of ego grasping with calm abiding. But what leads you to that is all this, exactly what we're doing here, using our concepts, thinking about it, analyzing it, understanding it first, having an experience of it even intellectually, but a genuine non-conceptual realization such that you cut the root of ego grasping can only happen in shamatha. But it's a gradual progress. It's a gradual process. We're about to be discussing emptiness, but that's a conceptual level. We need to understand it first conceptually. That's already pretty tasty. And we already apply that in our daily life. So it's a gradual process. Do you understand?
Yes.
Good, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So anyway, back to shamatha. So it's also, the techniques are still there from these Hindus from 3,000 years ago. Buddha took it with him, and since then it's an extant living tradition. People are doing it right now, So I think what I'll do, just for the imprint, for this 5 minutes we've got left, I will read the way Pabonka Rinpoche describes the 9 stages. Just a brief intellectual presentation of each of the things you'll accomplish at each stage, is roughly speaking the states of mind. I'll read that out for the blessing of it, and we'll discuss it a bit more next week when we talk about emptiness, okay? This will be for the imprints. It's good for the imprint. It's in liberation in the palm of your hand. Okay, here we go. There's 9 stages. And of course, these stages are translated very differently by different people. So I'm using this translation terms here of Michael Richards, who translated this years ago. So this is just the way Pabonka Rinpoche describes each of the stages of this 9 stages that culminate in calm abiding. So the first one is he calls it fixing the mind. Fixing means sort of focusing. So this is achieved by the power of studying the instructions. You have to know what you're doing. And so, of course, the way he's describing it here is the typical way in Tibetan tradition. The object of your concentration would be a visualization of the Buddha, So, or whatever the object might be. If you're doing Mahamudra, it's different. So you're doing, so here is the object of your concentration. So you first have to study what you're doing. You have to know what you're doing. You don't just sit down and bliss out, So, however, here you're only evoking the object of your concentration at the very first stage. It doesn't stay, and you can't make it persist for any length of time. At this point, though, this first stage, the power of your mind's mental processes of conceptual and analytical thinking, you can detect that you are under the power of a lack of focus. You feel that your conceptual thoughts have increased, but in fact, these thoughts have not increased. You have only had the insight of gaining some acquaintance with your conceptual thoughts. That's a really common thing. When people start to learn to look, we start to become conscious, practicing a spiritual path, meditating. One of the commonest feelings is we're getting worse, but we're not. It's just that we're beginning to notice our thoughts. And that's a very good thing, but it freaks us out. But it's excellent. We need to see the thoughts. So the very first level you accomplish is first of the 9 stages. I mean, you can't hold the object for very long. You get distracted easily, but almost you think you're getting worse, but you're not. So the next one is called fixation, or like focus with some continuity. After meditating in this way, you're able to evoke the object that you're meditating on and can even make it persist for a while. You can hold the object, for even maybe like a minute. He's not saying a minute. At this point, your conceptual thoughts are sometimes peaceful, and sometimes they developed. This gives you some insight into what it's like to be cured of conceptual thinking. That's how they put it. Cured of concept, meaning the chatting mind. There are 2 main obstacles in concentration. The tendency of the mind to never stop thinking. They call that excitement, when the mind's agitated, and that we live in that level, isn't it? And the other tendency in meditation, that's the other obstacle, is that you space out. And one of the problems with that is it can commonly be thought that that's meditation. It's just idiocy. It's spacing out. So this is the kind of thing that concentration meditation has got zero to do with being, it's not a relaxation technique. Concentration meditation, in the beginning especially, is sort of like you're driving on the freeway. You'd like to be relaxed, but you can't afford to think, now I'm going to relax at 120 kilometers an hour. You've got to have a sense of incredible focus. And you know that you cannot afford to lose that focus for 1 millisecond. That's a real sense of effort, you know. It's not spacing out. You'll never get concentration for eons if you just space out. It's the opposite. The third one is he's calling it patchy focus, fixation. This stage is like a garment with many patches on the material. So the object persists, the mind becomes distracted all the time. But you're immediately aware of this and you can fix it. See, that's the thing. We can sit there and watch our breath for 2 minutes and we can wander off and we don't even notice we wandered off because we get so caught up. So the catching the attention and bringing it back to the object, that's a really powerful point. Then, because spacing out is useless, utterly useless. The fourth one's called good fixation, good focus. So okay, just to give example, Venerable Rene, our Swiss monk friend, he did concentration meditation. I interviewed him years ago in 96 in Mandalay. And he said he got to the fifth, maybe touched upon the fifth stage. It took him about 6 months. So that's 6 months of meditating, having masses of merit, doing all the purification practices, all the 9 preliminary practices, years of retreat, years of living in vows, years of purification, and years of teachings. That was the preliminary, and he could get it after 6 months, all day, every day, intense focus, and he maybe got touched upon the 5th of the 9 stages. So we're talking something really powerful. And he said there was no way in the world he'd even be able to go into retreat if he hadn't been a monk, living in vows, having done lots of purification, having done lots of study, and having done lots of teachings. Without all that preparation, would have been impossible. So you need to know what you're doing is the big thing. You need to know how to, like I said to Terry, to interpret what you're experiencing, to be able to know what's going on, because the mind is a stupendously powerful thing. I mean, there's so many bizarre ideas of what meditation is in the world. It's just so peculiar, you know. The next one is this 5th one. 1, 2, 3, 4. So becoming disciplined. Venerable Rene said this, he maybe touched upon that. In the 4th state, the mind is overly knotted up. Okay, no, by the 4th stage, you've developed powerful, they call it memory, but it's like mindfulness. And mindfulness is this ability of the mind to bring yourself back to the object. So when he says you've got this powerfully by now. And you can fix your mind on the meditation object. From now, it's impossible for you to lose the meditation object. So this state is far more forceful than the previous 3. So just the same, while you're not losing the object, the meditation, you fall prey to the strongest forms of dullness and excitement. They're the 2 main obstacles. And you must apply antidotes. Both the 3rd and the 4th mental states are achieved through the power of mindfulness, this ability to bring your mind back to the object. From now on, this is very powerful. Now, the 5th one, so in the 4th stage, the mind is overly knotted up inside. Now at the 5th, the greatest danger is from subtle dullness. Even gross dullness for most of us, because it's very pleasant. People think it's concentration. It's just totally not correct. Subtle dullness is even more dangerous. And we won't, unless you're really quite advanced, you won't get to that. Here you develop powerful vigilance. So there's different, you see, in meditation, in everything we do, there is different states of mind, all doing their job, like I call the mechanics of the mind. So here in concentration, it seems to me attention is watching, mindfulness is catching my attention every time it wanders off and brings it back. But there's another one watching even above that called vigilance or alertness. And His Holiness calls it like the policeman. So now this one has to be started to be practiced. This is kind of watching all the other bits do their job properly. So here you got to develop vigilance, stands on guard. The next one, sixth, in the fifth state, the mind has been uplifted rather too much. And under these circumstances, the greatest danger now is from subtle excitement. When subtle excitement arises, you develop a more powerful form of vigilance in order to detect it. You see that even this subtle excitement is a fault and you need to prevent it. The difference between this state and the fifth is that subtle dullness is not the main danger here. Both the fifth and the sixth are achieved through the power of vigilance. So by this point, you know, you could say your mind's pretty concentrated and you'd have a very, very blissful mind. And we would go nowhere near these states in daily life. This takes, I mean, this is from Renee, from years and years of practice, meditating, teaching, purification, all the preliminaries, being a monk, living in vows, and working really hard at it for 6 months. Most people would not have the ability to sustain that for 6 months. We go crazy after 3 days, you know. So you can see already, just to get to the point of being qualified to go into retreat in the mountains, it's a pretty advanced state already, you know. So the sixth state now, yeah, so you now perfected vigilance at this point. So that means as you keep perfecting these qualities, you don't need to practice them anymore because you've done the job, you know. So the seventh one, it is very difficult to develop dullness or excitement because of the power of these two states of mind called vigilance and mindfulness. They've each got their own job. They're very specific parts of your mind, have been perfected. You develop the power of perseverance at this point, never giving up. For you wish to abandon dullness and excitement as much as possible. So the difference between the sixth and the seventh states is in the sixth, you must be very wary of the danger of falling prey to subtle dullness and excitement. But this is not the case with the seventh. At this stage, there's no danger from subtle dullness or excitement. All the same, you must make an effort in the techniques to abandon both of them. In the fifth and the sixth states, there was concern about the harm excitement could do to you. Now at the seventh, you persevere and are able to put a stop to excitement or dullness whenever they occur. They cannot then interrupt you for long. The 5 mental states, starting with number 3 and going up to number 7, are single-pointed concentration for the most part, interrupted by excitement and dullness. At these stages, the mental process is that of uninterrupted focus. And your mind is progressively getting more and more blissful, more and more clear, more and more amazing, more and more vast. They don't discuss that part. Lama Yeshe talks about that part in Mahamudra. The 8th, becoming single-pointed. At the beginning, you apply the antidote of your mindfulness, and through this, and though this involves a slight effort, you are then able to pursue the entire length of the meditation session without the slightest excitement or dullness. By the 8th state, you have not to have put any effort into the application of this vigilance. And after the slight initial effort during the 8th mental state, the whole session is not interrupted by dullness, excitement, and so on. Thus, this mental process at this point is of uninterrupted focus. And the 7th and 8th are achieved the power of perseverance. And finally, the 9th. This is the focus is now effortless. You spontaneously achieve this effortlessness by repeated cultivation of familiarity with the 8th state. You need not to exert the slightest effort to slip into single-pointed concentration. You are now completely absorbed in single-pointed concentration. But just may we think, may we achieve this? Maybe know we can achieve it. But I mean, to achieve it properly, you've got to give up sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and mortgages, and cats and dogs. And then even too, as Renee said, when you do get to the mountains and settle down into your cave or whatever, it takes months for the mind to even begin to calm down, to stop thinking of the endless things that we think of in daily life, our mummy, our daddy, our son, our children, our enemies, our friends, our food. It takes a long time for these thoughts to literally not come anymore, because you're no longer in contact with them. Then you can begin the work, you know. So we think we dedicate with this. And I'm sorry I didn't do the 4 perfections earlier. I didn't even look. So we've got a taste for the 4 perfections now. Now we're going to discuss the 5th perfection. And now the last 2 days, we're going to discuss the 6th perfection, how to realize emptiness. May all of these happen. Maybe we're sowing the seeds for this. Maybe get concentration. Maybe think, I want to get concentration. I want to subdue my delusions. I want single point of concentration. May I have all the conditions at some point to achieve it. Not, oh, I can't do that. That won't help you. I want it. May I get it. Jangchob, Semchob, Rinpoche, Ma ke panam ke guchig, ke panyam pa mepa yang gong ne gondu pelbashog. And just do a little medicine Buddha, not just for my sister, but everybody who's dying, because I put notices on Facebook and different things. People do that for me. And I got hundreds of messages from kind people. And every second one was, my sister died, my mother died, my dog died, my grandma died. It's everywhere. So everyone's dying. Everyone's dying. And we're going to die soon too. So we just say a few medicine Buddha mantras for my darling sister and anybody you know, who you love, who's died, who's sick. You imagine nectar, the Buddha in the sky, the blue Buddha in the sky, pouring light onto all these people, healing their minds and healing them. And if they've died, helping them get a pure human, perfect human rebirth. Ta taum bekenze, maha bekenze, ranza saman gate saha. Ta taum bekenze, maha bekenze, ranza saman gate swaha. Ta taum bekenze, maha bekenze, maha bek, ranza saman gate swaha. Ta taum bekenze, maha bekenze, ranza saman gate swaha. And may we be ready for our death. Thank you, sweethearts.